I feel like house flipping at that time or at any time is giving back to your community, rectifying these homes and bringing it back on the tax roll, giving people a beautiful place to stay. And then I feel the same about multifamily and giving good quality housing for those in the community.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. I have a new guest today for you guys. I am excited. This is Bob Couture. Am I saying it right?
That's right.
Wow. Woo. Do you know how often I get that wrong? This is Bob Couture with the PC Property Group and CP Property Group. And I want to read a little bit of his bio. I actually know Bob through the South Bay Phoebe meeting, and I've gotten a chance to see him at the meeting, but I've never had a chance to actually interview him. So I am going to be learning right along with you guys, my listeners. So Robert/Bob held positions in public relations, finance, and business administration with top and Fortune 500 companies such as Blanc and Otis, a Hill and Knowlton company, Oppenheimer and Company, and Northrup Grumman Corporation. You know, my bio isn't nearly as impressive as yours. I just want to let you know, just starting out, like I didn't work for any of these large companies. I'm not a big fancy guy like you are. So hopefully you'll be kind to me and you know, not give me too bad of a hard time because I have such an untraditional background.
Would it make you feel better if I was fired from all three of those companies?
Hey, if it's more real,
No,
sure.
I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Okay, I didn't think so, but hey. Well, you're also retired as an Army officer after 22 years of service and 3 overseas deployments. I don't think they fired you. 22 years Army, that doesn't sound like you were fired. It sounds like you retired intentionally.
All right.
Okay, he brings his corporate experience and military dedication to pursue his love of real estate full-time since 2013. Bob is a managing partner of CP Property Group, a realty and investment company with offices in Springfield, Massachusetts, and Hermosa Beach, California. He holds a Massachusetts real estate broker's license, a California real estate salesperson license. Bob is the co-founder of Western Mass Real Estate Investor Group. Additionally, he is a partner in Ironsides Property Group, a property management company in Springfield, Mass, and manages over 200 apartment units in Massachusetts and Connecticut. As an investor himself, Bob has a personal portfolio of over 60 units and has helped clients achieve their real estate goals through apartment syndication, apartment purchases, and/or multifamily, single-family properties. So, welcome. It is so good to have you here. I'm reading your bio and I'm like, okay, I'm a little nervous. Like, dude, no, not that I don't trust what I've become in my own real estate field, but I never took the traditional route. I have always been an entrepreneur all my life. When I used to do a traditional job, I found that I would wake up incredibly tired and not looking forward to my day. I'm like, somebody let me off the roller coaster. I don't want this anymore. So I became a full-time real estate investor as fast as I could. I did not want to continue the JOB track. You clearly mastered that and did the Army track, but you also clearly have a background in real estate. So tell us a little bit about your background in real estate and why go from where you were to real estate as a full-time love.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be on your show, and I have been at many of the Phoebes and the state of the economy that you've been a panelist on, and that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing your expertise in that, and I'm happy to be here tonight. So how did I get into real estate and my background? It was through the corporate track and realizing that as well, that I wasn't going to be happy doing this and working for someone else. And then when I look at my family, there's no one on my father's side of the family that worked for anyone. They all had their own companies, their own jobs. And so that was what it was going to be for me. When I came back, I was on military leave from Northrop Grumman for 5 years. When I came back, the company was very different, and I was very different. And that's when I knew that I needed to do something for myself. And I decided to get into house flipping, and I started flipping a couple of houses, and those were not as successful as I thought they were going to be. And it ended up being a accidental landlord. And then from there, I sort of, wow, this mailbox money isn't too bad. And we made some lemonades out of those failed house flips, and then it's kind of started from there. Continued house flipping, but started to build a portfolio slowly but surely, um, and then eventually, as I was progressing, wanted to get into bigger and bigger properties. Started to do smaller multifamilies, and then came upon my now partner on the multifamily side. He was doing syndications, and then that's how it all kind of came to be.
Wow. Okay. So it doesn't sound like that like when did you walk away from your job to take over real estate? It sounds like you started developing real estate and like you said, you moved into flipping, but tell me more about that decision point.
The decision point came when the organization took the day after Thanksgiving away as a paid holiday, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. No, I mean, in part that was it was I just needed an excuse, and that was the one. And I wish I had this really great thought out plan that I was going to leave corporate America on solid ground with a great portfolio, but it was not that at all. I burned all the boats. I left corporate America, and then I was going to go after this, and I did it because I think for me and my personality, it was if I had potentially a way out, I might have taken the way out. I had a young family, and if I knew that when things got hard, I could just go back to my day job, I probably would have done that. But by leaving it altogether, I knew I had to either succeed, um, uh, or not. It was do or die, sink or swim, and that was the way I went about it. Probably reckless or a little careless, but I felt confident enough in myself that I'd make it work, and I didn't want any reason, any potential to turn back.
Wow. Okay. So you went all for it, it sounds like. I mean, I could see how, the concept, or like you said, the straw that broke the camel's back was something very simple. But like you said, it sounds like it was a much deeper movement inside of you. And so I was like, okay, enough of this. So what was it like to first get into real estate? Was that overwhelming? Was it good for you? Was it hard for you? I mean, you said you did a couple flips for a while and you lost some money along the way. So,
I didn't lose any money.
okay.
I just didn't the house just didn't flip. So
Okay. Okay. I misheard you.
yep, but the I was in, I guess, in real estate all my life. My dad was in construction. He took a lot of summers away from me to go help him out on the job sites, and so I'd always been around that. And my wife, her family is in real estate, commercial real estate, and she had always encouraged me to go this real estate route. And I was hearing in my head that go out and be an agent, and that's not what I wanted. But then when I saw, like, well, all the various the background that I had growing up around construction and house flipping, that seemed to be kind of a natural way to go. My dad was semi-retired, so I had a built-in mentor there. I live in Hermosa Beach, California, but my parents are back in Springfield, Massachusetts. And when I looked at the money that I had, I looked at, oh gosh, I think I could make these dollars go further over there. And my dad was there, so went that way, and it was a great kind of lifestyle start for me where I could continue to live in California, go visit my parents in Springfield, Mass, and conduct business there, and then come build on in a community that I grew up in, and give back. I feel like house flipping at that time or at any time is giving back to your community, rectifying these homes and bringing it back on the tax roll, giving people a beautiful place to stay. And then I feel the same about multifamily and giving good quality housing for those in the community.
So you seem to have been able to develop it on both sides of the country. So you went from flipping, it sounds like primarily, and then you expanded yourself. So tell me more about that expansion and how that happened. Because it's like you're flipping over here, but you're living over here. One, I happen to know that's hard because I've tried to flip out of state. So I know you're traveling a lot to ensure the quality, even if your dad's there overseeing. Maybe he's a fantastic project manager and I just don't know that. Right. But then to go from flipping all the way into the level where you are now took either some intentional choices or some, progression.
Oh, definitely on the progression, and I did partner on the house flipping side with a gentleman that was on the ground over there because that really requires the boots on the ground, and that worked really well for a number of years. But what we were starting to see, and we should have realized early, is when things go wrong with a single family house, things go wrong with a single family house. There's not another income that is coming in. And so if you're spreading that risk through a four units or 6 or 12, that becomes a little easier. And that was my progression. Then I started shedding the single family properties for multifamily. And then there was a gentleman that was here in Hermosa Beach, and his family had been doing syndications for 40 years, and he wanted to employ the same thing. He was trying to do it in Maine, but I had the resources in Springfield, and then we partnered from there, and started off on some small projects, a 4-family, kind of test out our market, and then bought an 8, and then we went into syndication mode on a 12 unit, and then 20, and then we just kind of kept building from there.
Okay. Thank you for tracking that. Because I mean, there's multiple ways to go once you've been a flipper, whether that's into buying unit rentals for yourself to develop your own portfolio, or taking other people's money and doing bigger flips, which it sounds like is what you did. And you went bigger, not in price point or city, but in number of units.
Right.
And so you hold those primarily. So tell me about CP Property and what you're doing today, because you obviously have developed from a traditional beginning to, hey, look I'm now bi-coastal and I have, some syndications going, or I at least have some partnerships going. Tell me about how that's working for you, because I think you're currently in Hermosa Beach.
Right. I do want to make one comment about what you were talking about the progression of things. Is when I started marketing to purchase multifamily properties and started talking to various owners, it was almost this kind of, hey, welcome to the progression. The owners would say, these are apartment owners, say, I started off in house flipping, and then I went to smaller multifamily, and then I'm owning this, and it just seemed like I hadn't arrived, but I was getting to the place that I needed to be in the progression. Others have traveled that path, and so that gave a little bit of security and assurance that I was doing the but back to your question about CP Property Group and that being bi-coastal, we haven't done any syndications in California. Right? We have the office over here, and what we're finding for our business is it's a little challenging to find cash flowing properties in this California market. So what we get to offer is an out-of-state market that does cash flow. Okay. And so CP is the office to open that up and to have that opportunity. So we do help others buy their own apartments. And the challenge that they would have is buying. The first question is, well, who's going to manage the property in Massachusetts? And we have the property management company, and we have all the resources from the attorneys. It's an attorney state instead of an escrow one. So the attorneys, the insurance companies, the property management company, and the like.
Okay, so is CP Property then primarily helping to place people who are maybe California based into the Massachusetts properties, because that's a prime place out of state?
One more time?
I'm trying to get a sense for all that CP Property does. So it sounds like CP Property takes people maybe who are based in California and helps them find out-of-state properties that are successful and work and manage them out of state and Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, yes, in the greater Springfield area of Massachusetts.
In your particular market.
Yeah.
Is there other things that, I mean, you're both a real estate agent in both markets. So what else does CP Properties do? Because it honestly, it sounds like you're probably involved in more than just that. Not that
Yeah.
that's easy. That's not easy by itself. So.
Well, CP Property Group is also the brokerage in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And then here in California, I have my real estate license with Sotheby's International Realty.
I noticed you were with Sotheby's. So do you practice here then as well outside of CP Partners, or practice here as a real estate agent here in the Southern California market? Or is it really the greatest value you bring is the Massachusetts market, Springfield?
Nope, both.
Okay. What do you help your clients find here?
Here, multifamilies, smaller multifamilies that for clients that are not so concerned about cash flow and can ride it out for appreciation, and then primary residence and the like.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like a good example to me is, you know, I've owned in a couple different states myself. Like I had a 30 unit in Knoxville, Tennessee that I owned. And that was for cash flow, and the appreciation wasn't sexy at all. I've got a client right now who's just purchased here in this sort of Silver Lake area. And we're crunching the numbers and we're like, hey, guess what? You might actually be able to be cash flow neutral for the first 5 years. It's a taker. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's, to me, that's a whole new understanding of the purpose of multi-units. To me, multi-units were your cash cows, right? They were the things that you purchased, very boring. They didn't do very much, but they worked, right? 18 units, 20, 30 units. I'm not a big, I was part owner in a much larger building at one point, but in general, inside of my portfolio with myself, I own these smaller mom and pop buildings, right? Something that a management company to manage, and I can kind of wrap my head around. And said, a couple of them. And then it's like, those are supposed to be cash cows. I'm supposed to be, managing the managers to make sure that I get decent rents and have decent renters and, not too much vacancy. And then here we are in, this day and age. And I had to upgrade my understanding of investing to be able to go, right, owning an apartment building for appreciation, much like owning a flip for appreciation, requires intentional focus, cultivating the physicality of the units, which might include upgrades of some kind or might include repositioning it in its market, right? Includes getting tenants that now bring greater rent because, of course, the multiplication factor of every dollar you get in rent based upon the cap rate increases your, can increase the price of your building by $10,000, right? Depending upon your cap rate. And then that's like, wow, I'm actually holding this not for repositioning it in a Midwestern market where it gets me greater cash flow. I'm holding it to reposition it so that it actually is just worth more. And then I sell it or I keep it because now after 5 years, I might have actually such great appreciation. I pull money back out again, get it to cash flow neutral, right? And then make that money work somewhere else. It is a different dynamic that I literally had to learn in order to stay current with the market. How do you explain that to your investors? Like, I mean, maybe they already know, maybe they didn't need to re-educate themselves, but it's such a different market, California versus Springfield.
The cash flow piece, I think it resonates with the investors. Where we're having more of the difficulty is transitioning out of the cash flow piece to the appreciation piece, understanding to be at cash flow neutral or feeding an investment over a number of years. That I think is even for myself, I'm struggling with getting my head around that. I think Anthony Walker did a wonderful job during the IREC conference and talking about return on equity, and that's where I'm starting to come around a little bit and understanding it a little bit more, or becoming more accepting of it. Maybe accepting of it is what the word is I need to use.
I think accepting of it might be as good as some of us older investors can get to. But I really do have to confess that it really is like, I've owned buildings in Southern California intentionally with negative cash flow running through it because it was a project to build capital on. But my intention was to condo convert it, right? So it was a completely different, it was in some ways, it's a different play, right? But the requirement is to hold the building for 18 months to 2 years while you're, going through your yellow paper to get to your white to be able to be cleared to do condo conversions. And honestly, I would never do it again. I'm just telling you, I wouldn't do it again. I did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy the sink. I have to confess, the ending was not a grandiose ending, unlike what my numbers wanted to be. My ending was 2008. So no, I was not a happy camper, right? Because I had gotten this building, which I knew was negative cash flow. And I was spending all my time in 2007 and 2008 trying to reposition the building as an apartment building again and not as a condo conversion. And I felt like I did a relatively good job of repositioning it in a market that inherently did not want to support it being a positive cash flow building, knowing I had bought it, accepting a loss, and then the environment changed, right?
Now, if you bought it in 2012, do you think you would have, you're saying you would not have, you would not do that again, even if you bought it at a different time?
What I tell my clients and what I would myself would do, and environment has changed, so we can ask this, because this isn't about me, although that's very sweet of you to ask. It's about you. I apologize. No, if the environment has changed for two reasons. One is, if I bought it in 2012, I would ensure, and even clients who purchase today, I go, make sure it's neutral. You don't really want to hold a building up and play the game. It's sort of a gambling game, that timelines are going to work for you. That was my lesson. That was my lesson in holding a building that was negative. My timelines didn't work for me. I didn't feel like I had a big enough risk of buffer, right? So I'm like, if you're going to buy a building, great. Just let's do the numbers and make sure it's truly neutral at actual operating costs, not necessarily projected costs or pro forma costs, at actual operating costs. And I consider myself capable of working that out, having owned a couple of different buildings. So that's one, right? So I go, okay, buy it neutral. It's a win. That's great. We can reposition from neutral. The other thing is, I actually don't want to currently own in California. I don't really like the position that California is taking as far as rental units. I prefer to own out of state. That's a little more landlord friendly, because I've owned out of state, right? I've owned out of state previously. I've owned out of state now. I've sold everything out of state that I had. I sold every door during the downturn. I sold every door I had and switched over to hard money. And that's part of my story that might be on another video is at another time. But it does inform me as a consultant. This sort of experience informs me as a consultant to be able to manage risk. And therefore, I'd be one of those people going, yeah, let's talk about Springfield. Let's not talk about Los Angeles, even though you are an expert in both areas. Right? Yeah. So clearly you can support your investors. So if people wanted to come to CP Properties, what is it that they should expect? What makes you guys that sort of niche that they really want to go to you guys because you have it covered?
Cash flow properties right now, knowing that there are boots on the ground and that it's not, the other piece I think it's been very important to us is that we own and manage the property management company, that we're not trying to extract information or push on a different company to take care of your asset or assets. And then I think that's very important for us through the syndication too, the syndicated properties, that we're managing that as well. So I think that is the piece. And what we were finding is the lenders want to know who's taking care of that property for you, and then I like to think we've got a very good reputation in the Springfield area, and we're able to connect our owners with lenders there, and that know that their property is going to be taken care of.
The team is so important. I mean, I can't. I don't know if I say it every interview, but I say it as often as I can. The team is what defines more than 50% of your success. Your team can take a good building and make it horrible. right? Or your team can take a mediocre building and make it all of a sudden shine for reasons that they have worked out. So it really is you want to buy a property well, and we want to know our numbers well, and we want the numbers to work, and the numbers, guide the way, but your team is ultimately day to day the decider of that success.
Well said.
So, therefore, when you say, hey, I can offer a property management company on the ground for the long-term success of your building, I go, cool, let's talk to your team. Because I'm not going to fly out I'm not going to fly out there to check the building every 3 months. I'm not that owner. I'm not that kind of owner. I am going to look at my management statements every month, and I'm going to send you an email to talk about it, but I'm not going to fly out there and look at the building. I don't need to feel it, touch it, be involved with it on the physical level. So that's good to know. All right. So I promised I'd ask you this question, unless you have more you want to say. Go ahead.
Oh, and you don't have to fly out there, because I fly out there every other month, and my partner flies out the other months as well. So
good. Thank you. I don't want to do it. Thank you for that.
And I'm so happy he went in February, not me.
Right. I bet that's, harder and more complicated these days, to say the least. So I could go off on COVID, but let me go a different direction. Right. So I think that, like I've said every single show, because I ask this question almost every single show, real estate is a great way to earn money. It's a great field to invest in. I have invested in it for 30 years, and I have had my backside handed to me twice. Not once, but twice. So I know that real estate is going to ask a lot of you. It is not the easy game that maybe some people talk about. Yeah, maybe your first flip is fantastic and you go, woo, I just got $50,000. Let's do it again. Right. And it's really fun and it's really engaging. And for an entrepreneur like me, I love doing it. So I have not left the field. I have my good reasons for staying, but it will challenge you. So tell us about a time where real estate challenged you and what you did about it.
Great question. So I bought an 18-unit property, and I knew it was not in the best area, but I thought that this area was going to be one that had potential in the long. It was going to be an area that was going to gentrify. The building had great bones. It actually was a good-sized units. There was a lot to like about it. I knew it was going to be rough. I knew that the tenancy was rough. I had no idea how rough it was. And we're talking after hours parties, 3 nights a week, sometimes 4, a great deal of drug dealing going on. And this wasn't just maybe 1 or 2 units out of the 18. It was probably a good third of that. And there was a decision point. It was either do nothing, because the police didn't care. I wasn't getting any help from the city. The tenancy, the good tenants were scared. They were scared to bring anything up. And then those that were throwing all these parties and having on, they were paying every month. So I mean, on the books, it was like this thing was running just fine, and I could have ignored it, but I couldn't. And I didn't want to be that kind of operator. I didn't want to be that kind of owner. And I couldn't do that for the community. And that's why I took great pride in when I was a house flipper is changing communities. And here I had this opportunity, and I wasn't getting any help from anywhere. The police, I'll tell you, Christina, even to the point where I tried to hire the police to be there in the evening, not a single officer took the job. Like, you can hire a police officer to be on the street, like when you're doing construction.
Security or something. Yeah, absolutely. Off hours, they're willing to do a little extra work on the side. It's legit. They're allowed to do that. It's not illegal. Yep.
No one. They weren't going to do it. Even with the drug and crime enforcement, they weren't even going to do it. I even offered them an empty unit over there so they could do stakeout and
That's a great idea.
They wouldn't do it. They said that they were going to do it, but they never took me up on it. And I had, out of 18 units over a 6 month period, I evicted 14 of 18 units, and that was pretty hefty financial toll. But in the end, it worked out. And it worked out, and I put great people in. The people that did remain feel safe. The area is starting to gentrify. The city is now coming to us about looking to do beautification projects with trees on the curb, new lighting, where they wouldn't even go on that street before, and it is coming around. So it was something that I feel good about, but it was. I think I was naive thinking that I could get assistance in that. And where I grew up in it is I'm the only one that could be responsible for it. I knew what I was getting into. I could be a victim, or I could take action, and I wasn't going to be the victim here. And it took a little while, and it was gut wrenching. It took 6 months to evict, but it was another probably full year before we get the property operational. But we were able to get rents almost like 50% higher than they were before, and so it worked out, and weathered through it.
So I had a building. Remember my 30 unit I talked about in Knoxville?
Yeah.
Right. So we were able to, it was 50% empty. When we bought it, we believed the story of the guy who sold it to us, that it was just health problems that he and his wife were suffering from because he was an older guy, and that's why it was 50% empty. And maybe it was true. I really do believe his wife was sincerely having health problems. I don't think he made that piece up, but I do think after we took it over and we discovered that there was drug dealings going on in the building and we had scared tenants, you know, one of the partners, and I had another guy who was helping me with it, who was the property management company, was a partner, and he knocked on the door of the unit, right? The guy that we had the most complaints about before we had really truly clarified the depth of the problem. And when the door was open, of course, the tenant was holding a gun by his side. Good news or bad news, the guy who was my partner knew him through another channel in his personal life. And it wasn't a drug channel. It was another channel altogether. And he kind of went, oh, I can't do this. Like he literally could now not proceed because he knew him through a professional channel. He's like, I can't even do anything like this. But we were able to get the police involved, and we were able to get help and support, and we were able to make a difference and eventually get this guy out without us having to personally intervene in this. I mean, given your background in the Army, that must be incredibly frustrating for you, that there wasn't anybody that should have helped you. They should have been willing to step forward. They should have been willing to say, yeah, this is somebody trying to clean up the community. That's our job, is to help clean it up. You know, like, dude, come on, like, you know, Army, police, military, like we work together, don't we? I mean, it would seem like, so what did you do? What was the key that solved the problem? How were you able to evict them? Did they create huge, you know, struggles? Like, let's talk about what it really took to get this building to turn over, because evicting people can sometimes be more complicated than it seems. I want your story. I'm digging for your story.
I wish it was something sexier than notices for possession. They were all on month-to-month leases, and I couldn't evict for non-payment of rent because they were paying. Might have been in cash, but they were paying rent, and so it was notice of possession, and that was a longer course. But ultimately, when we did get to court, either they didn't show up, or if they did, they ended up getting maybe another month or so. But outside of that, it was just taking the long road through the court system. And Massachusetts is not a landlord friendly state by any stretch, but that was just simply the way we went about it. They were on month-to-month leases, so we could just serve notice for possession. I want my unit back.
I want my unit back. That's great. That's good. You just took the long, slow route, but obviously it worked, and they weren't threatening people as they left, which would be my concern. So it worked. Congratulations. What did you learn as an investor moving forward from this?
probably not enough because I did it again. And when
I've got a second story too about it. I do too, but my second story isn't nearly as complicated as my first. Go ahead.
No, no, I learned on it. It just reaffirmed that I'm responsible for it. I can't be looking for any other assistance out there, and it kind of comes into this COVID situation too of when tenants aren't paying. I can't be blaming anything else out there. Now it's up to us to find a way ahead, and whether that's working with the tenants, whether that's actually helping physically help them fill out applications to get government funding to help subsidize for that, whatever it takes, because no, the cavalry is not coming in to help us, and we've got to be there and take care of this ourselves. And we circle the wagons, and we're gonna make this work.
You know, I love your example of helping them physically fill out the forms. You know, it's the reason why I dig into these stories the way I do is because if I'm a new investor and I hear an older investor say, "Oh yeah, well we evicted 14 people," and it's like, "Oh cool, okay, they evicted 14 people." It's like, yeah, but I've been an investor, and I know in California, you know, it could be hard to evict one person, more or less 14. So that's why I'm digging for the details. Like, yeah, it took time, and you had to go through the court system, and you had to wait for it, and you had to, you know, find the code that allowed you to evict, right? And be able to use that code calmly and clearly. And then here you are in COVID saying, you know, we have tenants who can't pay, so let's help set them up for paying. And maybe it means I'm helping them, or one of us is, one of our property management assistants are sitting down with them saying, bring the form in, we'll help you fill it out. Well, oh, here's the mailing address. Let's mail it in. Like, you know, because, you know, there are tenants who are of a large variety. They come in many flavors of all kinds. And some of them are just going to be like the kindest people in the world, but we put a form in front of them. They're like, I don't understand government form. That does not compute in my brain. Government form is either scary, overwhelming. I do not understand it. I do not understand what they need in order for me to get the help I need. And so sometimes you just got to roll your sleeves up and make a difference.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate that story. So Bob, let me ask you this. You're an investor outside of CP Property Group. You have 60 units of your own. Running a company, you're probably getting a relatively good paycheck from your JOB, right? Every day you're working hard, probably putting some money away in some kind of retirement account. Why own real estate for your financial freedom?
Why own real estate for? Because I view this as, although this is helping me now, I want this to go on to my children. I want to build a legacy here. Maybe it's not these properties, but these properties will become other properties that'll be for them. And I hope that they learn to manage it and they go on to do the same thing for themselves. And these properties, by owning and then showing them, but it's a slow road to wealth, but it's there. It's a steady, and you get rich slowly in this game, but they can see that happening. I hope so. I have two young kids, a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I believe that they're starting to see this a little bit. We've purchased properties like a single family property and say, this is your college fund. By the time you're at a certain age, we're using this property to put you through college. And then there's a little bit of, you know, they get excited. How's my property doing? You're still going to college, I guess.
I like it. My daughter's 11. And I remember when my daughter was like 9, I took her through one of my flip properties. And I happened to have brought, it was when we had just purchased it, so we hadn't done anything to it yet. And I happened to have brought her like a cup of pasta for her to eat, right? Like, come on, you know, I got to go see a property. And she was, you know, my husband was home. So like, come on, go with me. And I wanted her to see it anyways, right? So I took her into the property and she kind of walked around. She's like, Mom, this property's kind of gross. I don't want to eat my pasta in here. Like, okay. I was a little startled by it because I think of her as being a tomboy. Like she'll sit in the dirt with bugs that she's just collected sitting around her eating her pasta. So I'm like, what do you mean this is too dirty for you, right? But it was fascinating to me. And so, you know, and then later I took her back to the house. Oh, put something on my sleeve. Later I took her back to the house when we were done with it. And she's like, I saw this house before. And I'm like, yeah, it's the same house. Remember, you didn't want to eat the pasta because it smelled bad? And she's like, no, it's not. I'm like, yes, it is. But I don't think she got it. But now that she's older, now that she's 11 and not 9, I'm a little like, I think she can start tracking it now. You know what I mean? Like it goes from here to there. This is what it becomes. You know, another story about my daughter, and I don't know why I'm telling you this, but another story about my daughter is that she asked me one day, she says, Mom, is that legal to buy a house and then sell it for more after you bought it? And I'm like, okay, I like her ethics. At least, you know, at least she's asking a good ethics question. Maybe I'm doing something right on the ethics front, right? I like her ethics. I said, honey, it's a little like buying an old car and then you make it all pretty and shiny and it works really well so somebody can drive it off the lot and they're not going to have troubles with it. That's what being a house flipper is like. I take a house that doesn't smell very good and doesn't look very good and I make it pretty and shiny so a new family can move in and live in it in a nice, healthy way. And she's like, oh, okay, I can see how that's worth more money. I'm like, good. Nice. I'm glad. So thank you for that. I think I will continue to encourage her to, you know, come to my projects, whatever I'm doing, primarily rentals these days. So I will take her to my rentals and show her how we can make a rental that looks kind of stinky, look kind of nice. And then, you know, house a good family in there, right? Yeah. This is the purpose of real estate. And so I appreciate that your answer basically, to sum it up, is about legacy. It isn't just about your retirement. It's about the legacy that you can leave for your children, whether it's a financial legacy, I suspect, or a legacy of them knowing what it means to be their own financial stewards.
Well said.
Okay, good. So I heard you right. So Bob, if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to go, hey, you know what? I like Bob. I like his model. I know what he's up to. I get where he comes from. And I actually, maybe I'm just looking for a good place to invest and Bob's got something good in Springfield, right? Or they want to buy something here in LA and they're like, I like where Bob comes from. I like his thinking. How do they get a hold of you?
Oh. Best for me, I still like using the phone, 310-922-5436.
Say it again.
310-922-5436.
Lovely. And you're a CP Property Group, so they can look at you there, right? Is there a website associated with that? Because our website I found was your sothebyrealty.com. So I know you're listed on that website as well.
Yeah. Or you can find me at www.cp-propertygroup.com.
There you go. That's why I didn't find you. I was missing the dash, cp-propertygroup.com. Bob, thank you for your time, for your honesty, for your stories, and for letting me dig in a little bit to try to help maybe my newer listeners or my younger listeners learn a little more about what it takes to really step up to the reality of what real estate is and how it grows you over your lifetime while you're growing it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and thank you for letting me share my story.
You got it. All right. I am Christina Suter. I am the host of Real Estate Breakthrough. Thank you so much for listening to this show. You will find this on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, and now Roku TV. So I am looking forward to hearing you guys, getting your feedback, and seeing you next week.